the pilgrimage is a metaphor, an image of our life. We progress, willingly and wittingly, we grow older, and eventually we die. And but sometimes young people die, and then we cross the threshold into what we don't see but we know exists. And so the religious celebration is the food that allows us to continue, not to remain and enjoying the food. We cannot just eat and eat and eat, and we'll have to walk it off. As the people say here in Texas, that is, we have to use the energy that we received to do something, and that's what it is. Being a religious action as important by itself, that does not touch the heart, but the one that touches the heart, makes it uncomfortable, and it pushes us forward. It unbalances us. It makes us lose the balance, and we may keep on standing only if we walk. Okay, that's kind of images. Of course, there were 70 people, and I would be with a smaller group at a time. It was because that's the way we were organized, because it was chaotic. Eventually, by the end of the week, there was a million people there. I mean, sure, Bolivia they had 1.5 million, which is, but can we distinguish between 1 million and 1.5 million? Now, when you see the crowd extends over this huge area and visible only because you see it on the screens. So, at St. Peter's Square, 250,000 people for the opening mass. So, we had to be organized. It was very well organized. Thank God, we always found each other eventually when it was time to find each other, to get together. So that was important to bear in mind, and just sharing with the pilgrims. I would say that the daily mass, and I preached a couple of times, specific occasions, and the other times both Father Zach and Father Tucker, Father Tucker, they preached, but always presided. It was always beautiful celebrations. I would say that my pilgrims that I felt were really conscious of the mystery that we were celebrating, whether it was in Rome, in a small church, in the Basilica, or in Assisi. In Assisi, also a beautiful moment. So I would say the Mass was a good time, where definitely I believe the Spirit was working. There were other moments where I was certainly excited. From my perspective, you mentioned Mass at St. Peter. I could celebrate the Mass at the altar of the chair, which is this altar with area behind the main huge altar when the Pope celebrates Mass. There were cardinals or bishops for special occasions, sort of behind it. Underneath the window with the dove, the Holy Spirit, which is beautiful. You could see from walking into the church into the end. So underneath there is a kind of lifted up wooden chair, gilded, so it's kind of undistinguishable. That is traditionally attributed to have been the chair of St. Peter, from which he would preach, the cathedra. Just like we have in the cathedral and the co-cathedral, the cathedra, where only the Archbishop sits, Cardinal Leonardo before, Archbishop Fiorenza before, and now Archbishop Joe Vasquez. I don't sit on the chair. It's not my chair. It's the chair of the bishop of the local church. And that was the chair of St. Peter. So it's incredible spiritual and historical value, that church. So I could celebrate it a few days as a priest. I was there for a congress at the Vatican many years ago. And more recently, once as part of my, what we call the baby bishops school, that the new bishops 1 week school, that we learn things about what it means to be a bishop in today's world. And one experience was to celebrate with a cardinal there. That was the first time that I celebrated. I longed to be there. I looked forward to be there. And I was very conscious of where I was. Emotionally, I was cool, so to speak, but very extremely conscious that I'm here from where the truth of Jesus Christ was first proclaimed. And the one who first proclaimed gave his life by being crucified, and as tradition goes, feeling unworthy of being crucified, like the Master asked to be crucified in upside down, as the tradition of St. Peter. But that's the meaning. So I'm very, very conscious that right behind me, as I was at the altar, and above me was the place, the tool from which the teaching of Jesus Christ, who died on the cross and rose from the dead, was proclaimed to the entire world. Rome was the end of the world because the capital of the Roman Empire. From there, it continues spreading across. So that was a very, certainly emotional, but a deep understanding of what it means to be at the cross, particularly as a bishop, what it means to proclaim the truth of Christ and nothing else but the truth of Christ. So that was certainly a highlight, a spiritual highlight of my trip. As it was the following day when we went to Sant'Alessio on the Aventino Hill for a half a day of reflection and a celebration of the Eucharist as well, with all the pilgrims, all our pilgrims, 70. And that's because we're, as a Somascan seminarian, I lived for 4 years going to philosophy and theology school. And so we organized it with Angie to make sure that we could go there, and everything worked out plainly. And we met with a group of consecrated women who, half Italian, half Americans, who are the apostles of the interior life, who offer spiritual direction at the Catholic Student Center in College Station at St. Mary's. So they've been involved with that. But those were personal, but beautiful. That was a good moment to be there and celebrate Mass as a bishop in a place where I spent many years ago years of formation, both religious formation as well as philosophical and theological. So those were the two highlights. And of course, there was the beautiful highlight of all of the events that we celebrated, to be honest. To begin, the opening Mass, Archbishop Filoni was the presider, and I was there with about, I kind of calculated, 100 bishops behind the altar in St. Peter's Square in the evening, 7, still daylight. And by the end, he gives the blessing, and then he says, "Don't leave, stay here," to everybody. And it was full. St. Peter's Square was full. I could see it from up there. And Via Conciliazione, full. There is a surprise, and then he repeated, "Hai una sorpresa per voi," in 3 or 4 languages. And the Pope is coming to visit us. It was just incredible. That was emotional. I felt as excited as when the name Habemus Papam, Robertus Franciscus Prevost, that was the feeling. And so he came, so I got to see him close by, about 50 feet away, because when he got off the car to go and talk, we waved at him and he smiled back at us. That was beautiful.